Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I wasn't planning to make a video right now, but sometimes when I hear the news, I just want to give my commentary just right away, very simply. I didn't really follow this story very much. I'm still going to work today. I don't have to, but I'm choosing to, and I'm allowed to. And so, but yesterday I put in a very big day at work. More than usual, 10 hours, something like that. Which I know there's some people who work 12-hour shifts, so I'm not complaining about anything. I'm just reflecting on that joy that I had, because it's wonderful to be at home with my family. It's wonderful to be at work. I'm very blessed and thankful for that on this day of Thanksgiving. This day of Thanksgiving and prayer, by the way, as Lincoln said. But I briefly heard something last night about, and this morning once again, about President Trump being upset about the, what do you call it? I'm forgetting the words here, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts. I saw something about that on, I get the emails from The Blaze and from Ben Shapiro, Daily Wire. I don't usually read the Daily Wire ones. The Blaze ones, I might read something if I see something interesting. But one thing I learned from one of my Rebbeim, Rav Agon, Meir Politsky, Zeichet Tzadik Livracha, was, there's an Indian sometimes just to read the headlines. And someone told me that the Skvera Rebbe, Zol Gesundheit, before he was Rebbe, I believe, would actually sit publicly and read the newspaper, just to be aware of what was going on in the world. Something, maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. But, I remember it was particularly, I remember Rabbi Belitsky, he asked me to go into the candy store and buy him the Allgemeiner Journal. And he said the Allgemeiner Journal, which is a Yiddish newspaper, is actually published by Lubavitcher Hasidim. It tends to have more of a right-wing Zionist ideology, similar to the Jewish press, maybe even a little bit more radical than the Jewish press in some ways. But he said the Allgemeiner Journal is a newspaper that he's talking about the Yiddish edition. In Queens, you couldn't get the Yid or the Blot. I don't think the Blot was out yet in those days. Maybe it was already. I don't know when did the Blot start. But maybe now you can. I don't know. But you could get the Forward or the Allgemeiner Journal. I remember once buying the Forward and feeling just so disgusted. I was trying to teach myself Yiddish. And as someone said, a Yiddish newspaper was almost like a textbook. So it was a good, it was an investment in the textbook. But the Allgemeiner Journal, they also now have an English version, I believe. I know I get their emails, and again, once in a while I look at the emails. But I remember the Divrei Torah that would be in there. I remember Rabbi Jacobson, wasn't Yossi, it was his younger brother. His wife had a baby in the Long Island Jewish Hospital where I was born, in New Hyde Park, in the neighborhood where I was living at the time, where my Baba Shalom lived for a long time. My Baba and Zayda, Leah Shalom. And so I remember, his Divrei Torah were very nice, and it helped me learn Yiddish. And I would read his Divrei Torah, and that's really what I was more interested in. And I remember talking to him about it when his wife had the baby there in New Hyde Park, and I went to visit them in the hospital. I used to just go do little Bikur Cholim visits, and so so I remember meeting him there, talking to him about that. But anyway, that's what I remember. Rabbi Belinsky said the Allgemeiner Journal is a newspaper. You just read the headlines. You don't have to read the whole thing. They could just be random. I mean, I see that now. The things my kids bring home from school, and it'll be a whole Megillah all in Yiddish. It's like, you'll excuse me, it's not my mama lashon, and so it's not so easy for me to sit and read a whole thing in Yiddish, especially God bless us Hungarians. My family actually, my Zeta's family actually came from Satmar. It was when Karen David was Rav there. It was before Satmar Rav was there when my family came here, and then you go back to their ancestors, go back to the first two Rabbanim in Krula, Meyer Leib, and the son was probably a little bit more famous, Moshe Arya, more famous because he had so many famous Einiklach who were named after him, and so now my son is named Moshe Arya after the tzaddik Moshe Arya Krula, our ancestor, the Heilige Zayde, the Krula Rav, who actually met the Barditchever. So it's very auspicious, special thing. He tried very much to avoid meeting the Berditchever, but in the end he did, and so it's something that's very special to me. We're coming up in the yard site of his Adam was the Chengarov, and that was the last Rabbanish Zayda I could find in my Zayda's Yichus, but there might be others in the Baba's Yichus too. Who knows? But this is what I found so far. And the Chengarov for Moshe Spitz was a big yachs, and went back to the Chavas Yor, and Chavas Yor was an Einikel from Maral in Prague, and he was also an Einikel from the Shlag Kodesh. Shlag Kodesh had so many children. I think probably half the people in the world today are Einikel from the Shlag Kodesh, but at some point you go back far enough. And the same thing, the Maral also had a lot of children, a lot of Einikel. So, but anyway, the Indian though is to have a kesher to these tzaddikim, not just biologically, but spiritually, in learning their Torahs and so forth. So that's what we have to remember here. The concept that we have here that I wanted to talk about with the headlines, and so I saw this headline about Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, and Chief Justice Roberts having an argument about. I didn't see what the argument was. I heard about it on the radio, and the discussion was that the Ninth Circuit judges said, that something about, I believe, I didn't hear the whole thing, but I'm assuming that the president was saying that for someone to come and claim asylum, they should come through a port of entry and not just come into the country at any point. There's a practical reason for this, and that is when you have a lot, particularly, a few thousand people claiming asylum, and some of them might have a legitimate claim of asylum, and some of them might not have a legitimate claim of asylum, and you just let them in, and you tell them, all right, come back at this time for an asylum hearing. Well, who's to say that they're ever going to show up again? So it's a very practical aspect of the president's job is, as the executive, to enforce the laws that are on the books. And so he's doing his job. And if he sees that there's a loophole that people are using to circumvent the law and then break the law by not showing up, so it's totally practical and legitimate to take those actions to fulfill that purpose of his job as president is, as the executive, is to enforce the law. That's one of the main jobs of the executive branch. Now, he made a comment that this was an Obama judge who said it was wrong, and Chief Roberts said, we don't have Obama judges, we don't have Trump judges, we don't have Bush or Clinton judges, we have American judges who do their job, try their best to do their job, and which is an ideal, correct? And then he says, but what's more important is to maintain the balance of power, which again, in ideal, he is correct. But the question is the president violating the balance of power by criticizing the judicial branch with something he disagrees with the judicial branch? And the answer is obviously, just think about this. Forget that it's President Trump if you don't like him, and forget it's President Trump if you do like him. I personally like him. I was not a big fan of his, I'll say, when he was running. I did vote for him more or less grudgingly, just because Hillary Clinton was so bad. I would go so far as to say that if it was Bernie Sanders running against Donald Trump, I would have felt comfortable to vote third party and vote, even though I wasn't so happy with the Libertarian candidate. I would have much rather seen Austin. But that being said, it was what it was. Other people I know did vote Libertarian. I forget the name of the guy from Colorado, whatever his name was, but he was the governor of Colorado. But I wasn't so happy with his platform as much as with Austin. I don't remember his name now. I know he tried to run for senator as well, and that didn't work out. But it is what it is. Hopefully someday, he was smart to run as a Republican. Maybe he would run as a Republican sometime in the future for president, and that could be something, excuse me. But anyway, this is the main point that I just wasted 12 minutes saying that I could have probably said in 5 minutes, and I could have been learning during this time, or listening to Hugh Hewitt and learning. But anyway, the roads are it's better. I'm keeping my eyes on the road though, with these roads, especially this road. Maybe when I get on a main road, it'll be a little different. But there's no one else on the road. It's Thanksgiving. I saw 2 or 3 cars already today. So anyway, which is just as much as I see any other day driving around here, which is great. That's part of the reason why I love living up here. I was saying to someone, I was in Passaic, New Jersey, and I was like, I'm so nervous driving in this big city, because I'm such a country boy, So anyway, this being said, let's move this aside. Let's get this going. What am I saying exactly here? This is a bad turn here. My camera thing is all messed up, so it just, I gotta, in my other car, it stayed still, but this one, there's nowhere else for me to hang it, so that's why it always does that. Just anyone who's curious. And anyone who thinks I'm, driving a British car, you do understand that it's the selfie mode that reverses everything. So this is actually my right hand. So if I had some writing, let's see, here's a seltzer bottle. You see it's backwards? That's the whole thing's backwards. It's not Hebrew. So anyway, so there is nothing illegitimate with balance of powers works all three ways. The president has just as much. It's not like, oh, Mr. President, we're here, the judicial branch, we're here to babysit you. You better listen to us because that's the balance of powers. No, that's not how it works. You can be mad at me and I can be mad at you, and that's how it's supposed to work, because really nothing's supposed to get done. Most of the power is supposed to belong to the people, and the government is supposed to be very limited. Not totally limited. There is power that the Constitution gives to the government, but it's supposed to be extremely limited. And this concept of judicial review is quite problematic. However, I would say it's less problematic when it comes to executive action than it does to legislative action. It is more appropriate for there to be judicial blocking of executive action, but there wasn't that much of it under President Obama. Most of President Trump's executive action has been just reversing the executive actions of President Obama. This one, though, again, as I said, in my poor and meager understanding, it seems to me that it is totally appropriate for President Trump to what was I saying? To take this executive action, because his job is to, like I said, to execute the law, to enforce the law, and he's doing that because people are taking advantage of the law in an initially legal way in order to later break the law in an illegal way, which happens all the time in our immigration system, and it's not supposed to. It's, people are not supposed to be breaking the law. It's illegal to break the law. I'm sorry, I had people who I know who came here legally, who wanted so much to stay. They did not want to go back to Europe, wherever they came from, and they are miserable there. They feel that they are actually being religiously persecuted in a certain way. And yet they know that they will not be able to claim asylum. Even though they are, there was the case that Obama denied religious asylum to a German family who wanted to homeschool and wanted to come to America as homeschoolers, and homeschooling is illegal in Germany. So, that was something I once had an interview to be the chief rabbi of Munich, and that was one of the issues we discussed. And I was like, what if I don't like the Jewish school, the government Jewish school that Germany is offering? And I was like, can I homeschool my kids? And they're like, no, that's illegal in Germany. And I was like, there's so many things. Today's Thanksgiving. We have to be thankful. And Germany is probably, people should be aware, it's probably the least anti-Semitic country in Europe today. And it has been for 20 years. Germany has changed. But I am thankful that I don't live in Germany or in most European countries or in Israel or all these countries where the government runs everything. I am so thankful as a clergyman to live in a country that has the radical Jeffersonian freedom of religion that I think really should exist everywhere on this planet. To me, theocracy can only work with the Urim and Tumim. Even with the Sanhedrin, theocracy was not something that could work as a viable government operation without prophecy to back up certain aspects of governmental rules. You know, you needed the Urim and Tumim. You needed, and the thing was, sometimes you didn't even listen to that. We saw, you know, King David made a direct census instead of just relying on the half shekel, and he was punished for that. The people were punished for that. So theocracy, to be viable, needs a level of divine intervention, that free will, which is necessary for us to survive as human beings, to have free will, necessary for this whole purpose of, in a theological sense, this whole purpose of our existence. We need that gift of free will. So in order for that to be so, we need to live in an imperfect society. And to me, that being said, that freedom is really where divine providence and divine intervention comes even stronger in the liberty of America than it could ever be in what do you call it? In a place where government controls everything. You know, in certain ways, the God-given freedoms are taken away by a theocracy. And there's less room to allow, in a way, theocracy removes, nothing can limit the divine power to rule over our lives and to make our lives the way it is, the way they are. But the power of freedom, I don't mean this to be heretical, because I believe in the absolute nature of divine providence. That's central to Hasidic theology, for sure. I'm just thinking out loud right now. But, I mean, this was the argument, you know, we know between the Balatanya and the Mendel Rimanover, regarding Napoleon. And even though there was the opposition to Napoleon as well, there was a recognition that there would be some point in history where we would be able to have that freedom, and that Napoleon was not the great liberator that he claimed to be. There's a lot in here, and it's worthwhile to look into that history of the different views, especially next week is Yud-Tes Kislev, and it's connected to that story. But was it Mendel Rimanover? I'm trying to remember who it was exactly, but among the Hasidic masters, among the tzaddikim, there was that, and I didn't eat breakfast yet this morning. I don't remember. I'll have to do more research into this. I remember learning this a long time ago, and I haven't reviewed it as I should. But this difference in opinion between the different tzaddikim about freedom and the power of freedom. But now, I think l'chulei alma, we agree that living in a free country, according to the tzaddikim, is better for us because we have the opportunity to be as frum as we want to be. Anyway, that's not the purpose of what I want to talk about, but it's certainly something I'm thankful for. I really wanted to make a video, more or less, even though I started to do one, but I interrupted it. I did post that raw video that's incomplete. I like to just put it out there. This should not have been 25 minutes. I meant this to be 5 minutes, but I said a lot of things I wasn't intending to, and I thank God for that as well. I believe that every aspect of our lives is ruled by divine providence, including the words that are coming out of my mouth right now. And so I thank God for that, and in a very humble way, even though it sounds pretty arrogant, and maybe it is. I'd like it to be humble. This is a day of thanksgiving and prayer, and I can pray that it should be considered above as something humble. But the thing is, there's no difference from the words that come out of my mouth and the words that come out of your mouth. They're all equally guided by divine providence. And this is a central concept in Hasidic philosophy and theology. I remember learning that from what's his name? Pinchas Rumpler Shlita. His brother's a little bit more famous, Baron Rumpler. I remember I was in Uman, and Reb Pinchas was there, and I spent a lot of time with him there. And there were these, guys from, I don't know if they were from Teaneck, or maybe from Woodmere, or where they were from, and I heard them talking amongst themselves, and they said, Reb Pinchas Rumpler is here, and they were like, who's Reb Pinchas Rumpler? And they said, Reb Baron Rumpler, that's his brother? They said, yeah. And they said, Reb Pinchas is bigger. And, but people don't know it, because he's a tzaddik nister. But he wrote Sfarim, and it was min hashamayim how I got to know him, but I've lost contact with him. If anyone knows, you can privately, because he moved, and so I don't have his phone number anymore. If someone could privately give me his phone number, I'd like to get in contact with him. I don't know quite, I know he's somewhere in Borough Park. But I remember Pinchas told me, he showed me this, something he wrote. I think it was, we were by the Sklener Rebbe's Tish maybe, when he was writing Sklener Rebbe Shlita, Tzaddik Ador. I need to go back there sometime. I haven't seen the Sklener Rebbe in a few years now, and it's something I really need to recharge those batteries. But it's so hard to go into Borough Park. Borough Park is like this big klipa around the tzaddik. Such a big tzaddik like the Sklener Rebbe needs such a big klipa like Borough Park. I don't mean that. I don't mean the people of Borough Park. I mean the traffic. I mean the pollution. I mean all, the people in Borough Park are all tzaddikim. That's also, I don't know everybody, but there's also, I'm also a big klipa, but it's something. I'm sorry, I'm going off but let's finish this now, because I have things to do before I get to work, and I'm almost there. But Reb Pinchas said that the Chiddush of Chasidus, which the Piasetzner, probably my favorite sefer from the Piasetzner is Mavoi Hasharim, and he speaks about the avodah of Nevuah and the avodas of Nevi'im and a prophecy, and then from prophecy he discusses the Kabbalists, and then he discusses the Hasidic masters, and he said, what's the difference between the Hasidim and the Kabbalim? And he said the difference is that the Kabbalists taught us that the whole world are vessels filled with the light of God, and the Hasidim taught, the Hasidic masters taught, that the whole world are vessels filled with the light of God, and the walls of the vessels themselves are made out of the light of God. That everything is the light of God. And so in a practical sense, Reb Pinchas Pinchas Rumpler, soll gesund sein, he said to me, and he wrote in his sefer, that means the Chiddush that he discovered studying the Hasidic Sfarim, and something that the Sifrei Chasidus that he didn't see before that, was that God guides, that the earlier teachers of mysticism taught that God guides our thoughts that we think involuntarily, and the Hasidic masters taught that God is in control even of the thoughts that we voluntarily think. And certainly when we come to the Ishbitzer Torah, that's pretty much, certainly in Ishbitz, that it goes without saying that that's true. The question of the other Hasidic masters, it's not a monolithic theology, but there are certain basic ideas that I think we all share. And yes, the Ishbitzer was very, very controversial, and being someone who has a strong, I don't say I'm any particular type of chassid, I don't even say I'm chassidish, I say I'm an American rabbi first and foremost, Jewish rabbi, who takes value in the classical Hungarian approach, of which Satmar is a major part of that, and probably the biggest example of that today. And it's not a purely Hasidic ideology, it's more of a holistic Haredi ideology that tries to embrace all the various things. But certainly the major influences to the Satmar Rav were the Chassam Sofer, who maybe himself was not really Hasidish, but he was a Talmud of the Haflah, who was Hasidish, of course, and what do you call it? And the Divrei Chaim. And so the sons of Rav, Divrei Chaim, was very upset with the Ishbitzer. He strongly disagreed with the Ishbitzer. But still, having a holistic approach, you can still find the Svarim of the Ishbitzer in Monroe, in the Svarim Geschäft, which there are other Svarim you're not going to find, even though most of the Talmidei Chachamim in Satmar are just as well versed in. I'll give you an example. One of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Jeffrey Siegel Shlita, he said that when he came back from Eretz Yisrael, he went to talk to a Dayan. He didn't say which Dayan it was, but he said someone from the Satmar community about a question on Amara, and this Dayan said, well, who are you to be paskening on this Mara? And then he said who he was and who he learned from. He said, oh, okay. And then he didn't mention that he was somewhat of a Talmud Mufak to Chacham Avadia, who I was zeichet to see a few times, but then he quoted something that's in the Abi Avoimer, and he was scared. Here I am quoting the chief rabbi of Israel to a Satmar Chassid, and then this Dayan said, "No, I had that. That was in mind also." And then he was like, "Wait a second," like he realized that the truth is, much of the literature world doesn't touch Rav Avadia's Sfarim for various reasons. And and it's not for political reasons. And here's a Satmar who is totally comfortable with Chacham Avadia, even though he was the chief rabbi of Israel. No, Chacham Ovadia was a little bit anti-Zionist. He had a certain level of anti-Zionism in him, but and that's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be holistic and receive everybody. You know, it's not it's not like and there's still problems. Nobody's perfect, and we're also not perfect. It's like Samarov always said, all the Rebbes think everyone else is wrong and only I'm right. And Samarov said, I agree everyone else is wrong, but I'm also wrong. And that's also, but the thing is our being wrong is also divine providence. It's also Hashgacha Pratis. And for that we can be thankful too, because that means that even as imperfect as we are, that's just how God made us, and that's just how God wants us. And last night, we had an interfaith Thanksgiving program in the institution where I work, where I lead the religious services. And we all, and a theme that came again and again from the various speakers was that we should, when there's nothing else to be thankful for, we have to be thankful for God. And we have to be thankful for God for being God. And that's beautiful. And so I want to talk more about this later. We've already gone over a half hour. Nobody's going to watch this. If you did watch it, I salute you and I thank you so much for watching it. And you're not nobody. And I'm sorry I said that. Because even though you know, Batal Data and Kaladim, I'm sure there's a lot of people who might have watched a few minutes and got bored, but I'm sure probably most of the 20 people who are watching this maybe made it to the end. I thank you for that. And please put a comment. Happy Thanksgiving. I know a lot of people are uncomfortable with that, but I'm not. I'm proud to say Happy Thanksgiving. And I'm happy to talk about that as well. In a way, it's a way that even the tzaddikim and poskim who I respect can also be wrong. And a lot of it has to do with getting wrong information. Although maybe I'm wrong. But I can, you know, and if that's my sin, I'm happy to confess that sin. You know, like the sheep on The Simpsons, who were like, you know, I don't have a, you know, I don't have a sin to confess. And then the other said, yes, you did. Then the big ram said to the little lamb, no, you have the sin of pride. So that's you know, and it's a mitzvah to say vidoy. So and you know, like we talk on Sukkot, like the Ritticher says, you know, Rishon Hu L'Cheshbon Aveinos, and Samarov talks a lot about that. So and that can bring us joy as well. Simcha Seitzeo, that's something that we were talking about yesterday. I'm thinking tonight I might want to fear episode Tish. I'm not gonna maybe not have a whole Suda, but just a L'chaim Tish Mizayna, something in honor of Thanksgiving, a little bit something. So that might be a live video. Might even take out the culprit, who knows. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please comment, and please share. Please share with others. Even though I don't deserve it, certainly I appreciate it, and I'm thankful for that. All right, God bless. Take care.